Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Chris. Big kind of long video today. Please stay with me. I know a lot of times you listen for a few seconds, then you click off. But if you're really interested in the resale marketplace and the retail marketplace, that's what this video is for. So if you see to my side, it says Footwear Futures Navigating Declining Sales in Sneakers. I'm going to read this to you guys because it's available for sale, but I think it's going to be better suited if it's a video and people can look at it because there's a lot of data in this video and there's a lot of charts, and it's going to open up a discussion that won't include some of the brands that are quote unquote growing in resale, but we have to be very careful with this idea of growth. Now, this is an analysis, and it presents a micro set of data, a small set of data from one indie sneaker resale platform. So this is only one collection of data. And while just one collection of information is presented, the numbers that are here align closely with retail pricing and in-store. And I used a combination of in-store interviews with managers of traditional retail chains to kind of verify certain things from the seller's data. The information is beneficial to any person interested in the challenges currently facing sneaker businesses of all types, not just resale stores, but traditional retail. And we know we got a lot of things that are happening with stores closing and stuff like that. So that's what I'm focused on here. So I was able to get the data from a 1099 and the sales information from this person, a CSV. And this 1099 showed the information from a medium-sized resale platform. So what's a medium-sized resale platform? In my opinion, small resale is less than 100,000. Medium is a bigger range. It's from 100K to 1 million. Large resale, in my opinion, are people that make more than $1 million a year. I should really say that large would be 500,000 and up because that's pretty big. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to stick with these three kind of notations for small resale, medium resale, large resale. All right, so medium. This seller is in the medium range, and the seller did not operate in the premium marketplace. Primarily, the majority of the sales that the person had was on general release product, things that can be found in the marketplace normally. All right. The seller utilized a combination of arbitrage and discounted products where they sourced it from different places, different people, and from different stores. So the seller primarily sold on Amazon and on StockX. So there won't be any GOAT information in this. The majority of the information comes from Amazon and from StockX. Matter of fact, most of it comes from StockX. The numbers provide this window into the last 5 years for the seller. So that comes from 2019, which was a market that wasn't as cluttered with sellers, to the COVID year, which is in yellow below, if you look over here, to the decline post-COVID, which are the years 2022, 2023, 2024. Now, it's really hard to pull together a bunch of details as efficiently as I used to. And if you notice, I don't do a lot of resale videos anymore because I built this gym. And I've been really focused on the gym, and that takes up a lot of time. So you haven't gotten a lot of data and research from me lately, but this should really help to shed light on a lot of the things that are happening where people are talking about resale and they're talking about stores closures and stuff like that, but it should help a lot. So I have the seller's data for 2024, and I broke down all of this data into charts. So you'll be able to look at these charts. I'm going to try to find a way to put the pictures individually up so you can see them. The majority of the sales for the seller were Nike and Jordan brand, and a small amount of Adidas were sold. So what do we have here that we're looking at for this seller? You look over here to the side, and we have the product of sneakers. The years are from 2019 to 2024. From 2019 to 2024, the seller lost 64% of their business. So if you're asking why our store is closing, the seller went from $701,000 a year in 2019 down to $250,000 in 2024. The seller is officially out of business as of this year. That's one of those things where everybody's going to say, good, that's what you deserve. Hold on, let's not do that. And this is why. There are certain markets that don't get certain shoes, and this was a seller who was focused on getting regular stuff and selling it at basically retail prices with maybe a $20 to $30 bump over the price to account for fees on StockX. That's getting ahead of myself. I won't do that. Hopefully you'll stay with me. Like I said, this is a long video, but it's going to be a really informative video, and it's going to help you to understand the market a lot. So bookmark the video, come back to it, watch it in chunks if you have to. Watch it in 1 to 3 minute bursts because it's a lot of info. But if you see to the side, 2019, the seller made $701,000. 2020, it dropped down. That was the COVID year, which is the yellow year. $521,000 from 701 to 521,000. 2021 is an interesting year because the seller bounced back, went to $625,000, which is off of the 701,000 of 2019. That's still down, but it went back up from the COVID year. Now, there's a reason for that. A lot of things entered the marketplace. There was a bunch of sales, and the seller had access to a lot of product and was able to sell that product at a nice markup. All right, so it was a bounce back. 2022 saw a ton of people buying and entering the resale market. Things started to temper themselves. It got a little bit slow, went from 625,000 down to 486,000 for that seller. So if you look at 701,000 in 2019, 2022, that seller was at 486,000. 2023 saw a momentary spike because of Jordan 1s. Jordan 1s. People started buying them, Panda Dunks. Those things went crazy, so you saw a small uptick of 588,000 in 2023. But as Dunks, Jordan 1s, became oversaturated, this seller went all the way down to $250,000. Why are resale stores closing? A 64% drop for this seller mimics a lot of the drops across the board for sellers. Now, did this happen at retail as well? Yeah, retail stores slowed down also. Now, there's a lot of different reasons for that, and I'm going to get into it. I've broken everything down into these charts. Let's jump to the next one. So this is my initial analysis, and I have this chart that you see to the side, and I'm explaining what the seller did. The seller clearly sticks with the most in-demand products, right? And that's Jordan brand. That's Nike. Some Adidas. Now, there's been a ton of reports of growth of other brands in resale, ASICS, for example, and there are ASICS shoes that are entering the market. ASICS has a price point on the old school like gel shoes that are $100, and you can sell them, popping my knuckles. You can sell those for about $130 to $150. After fees, you can probably turn about a $10 to $20 profit on those shoes. Now, that's just information that I'm giving you as a person that looks at the charts. ASICS gels are selling. So you have a growth of ASICS gels, but On Running is not necessarily selling in resale. They are selling at the retail market, but not in big enough numbers and demand that drives resale prices. But ASICS, interestingly enough, ASICS, depends on how you pronounce it, ASICS is hitting resale. This seller didn't have access to it, so that doesn't show up in this data. Another brand that is growing in a very similar fashion to ASICS is some Sauconys. Some Sauconys are growing in that same way, but not the old school running shoes, the limited J-tips designs and things like that. So we can't really factor that in. If we look at ASICS, ASICS is the one that's really growing. New Balance, same thing. New Balance started to hit a few years back with the 550, right? Now, according to this seller, all of those other brands are too risky. So the seller stuck with Nike, Jordan, and Adidas. So ASICS, New Balance, even when discounted, it was still a gamble. And even if he could get those shoes at cost, the seller didn't want to stick with it or hold on to that product. So the numbers that you're going to see below, and this is a breakdown of the sellers, all of the things they sold in 2024, and it shows some of those things include a little bit of apparel, but not much. But if you look to the side here, you'll see a breakdown of 2,481 sold items. For the seller, Jordan Brand made up 992 of those products. Retros, performance sneakers, and lifestyle versions of the Jumpman brand. So year over year, sales were down, but this seller works in the same area of pricing as traditional retail. For Jordan Brand, they weren't selling it for crazy money. They were selling it for right around retail. The seller only sold 56 items of Adidas. Now, that comes with an Adidas outlet that's at 70% on some of the product. But there is a contingent of people who use scanners who walk into Adidas stores and they bulk purchase hundreds of Adidas shoes. So the things that would potentially sell and resell for Adidas for this seller, they're typically bought out by huge bulk buyers. So 56 items they sold from Adidas. The seller utilized the Adidas outlets, which sells all products at 60 to 70%. The seller attempted to work out of Puma, Under Armour, and Converse, but resale was pretty much non-existent, and Adidas wasn't very strong because you could not get a big abundance of things out of that outlet. All right. So Nike shoes, the seller sold 1,434 pair. So in 2014, resale began to decline, and this is me writing a report here, but it was disrupted by a variety of events. Nike remains the only brand the seller will take on inventory and hold. This seller takes on inventory and holds Nike and Jordan. That's it. Won't hold any other brands. So even with the growth of other brands, you get what is basically kind of a red herring. And this is why. Let's say you sold one Asics in 2023, and then you sold 10 in 2024. That's 1,000% growth. It's 1,000% growth. So if somebody says, hey, Asics went up 1,000% on StockX. If you only sold 10 the previous year and you sold 100 the next year, there's 1,000% growth. So you're going to show this explosive growth, which is good. That's not a knock, but it's only 100 pair that's been sold compared to possibly you may get an Asics shoe or maybe a black gel 1130 and it sells 20,000 pair, right? But the rest of the Asics kind of category, it sells 30, 40 for an entire year. While you have an Air Force One that sells hundreds of thousands of pairs a year on third-party platforms. So when I say that, that's what I'm saying. Let's get back to work here because we're going through this research that I've done, and I want you guys to really get a lot out of it. So here I'm going to get ready to start breaking down this seller's data. So I did a SWOT analysis, and if you guys don't know what a SWOT analysis is, it's basic. I did one for basketball. I also did one for, let me see, I think I did one for Nike too. But I'm breaking down this seller's data. And the best place to start for the seller was with Nike/Jordan Brand basketball. Now, I've always found small data sets are often a microcosm of the larger marketplace. So if you have a small amount of data, you can juxtapose it or compare it to the larger marketplace. And very typically, it mirrors the greater marketplace. Now, as I begin to segment the sales from the information, there's a story that presented itself in this seller's data of Nike Jordan Brand basketball, and that story starts to take shape, and it verifies a lot of information that I've been seeing in the basketball category. And now this is important for, let's say if you work at Under Armour, this is probably really important for you to listen to because basketball, and Under Armour is really building its footwear on the back of basketball with Curry and the Fox that are releasing. Basketball was once the driver of sales and sneaker culture and kicks. So at the beginning of sneaker culture, and it was basketball that drove the interest in sneakers. Basketball is now very similar to other performance categories, golf, soccer. While the sneakers for basketball, the new shoes, not the retro shoes, the new shoes, while the sneakers have these amazing colors and concepts and all of this technology, most consumers aren't wearing basketball shoes for fashion anymore, unless it's extremely limited, right? So let's say you have something like this Kobe Pro Tro 3 that's coming out. Will that sell out? Probably, because Nike's not going to make that much, right? So they have a scarcity model with the Protro. It'll sell out because there's not that many of them out there. But people aren't wearing hooping shoes for style. They'll wear some Kobe's. They'll wear some obviously they'll wear retro Jordan shoes. But Nike is in a very unfamiliar territory where basketball no longer leads. Now, as a precursor to breaking down what sold for this seller, this SWOT analysis is below. And this is for basketball only. Now, when I say basketball, I'm talking, GT Cut, GT Hustle, LeBron's, KD's, all of the different shoes, Booker's, Sabrina's. That's what basketball. I'm not talking retro Pippins or up-tempos or CB34s. I'm not talking retro. I'm talking performance basketball. All right, just making sure that's clear. So this is a SWOT analysis that I created so the seller could see this information and use it. Now, like I said, they're pretty much out of business now. It doesn't really help them. But this information is really important for other people who are looking at resale. Now, SWOT analysis is going to give you strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is for Nike and Jordan basketball. Now, the strengths for Nike basketball and Jordan basketball is going to be an extensive product mix. They got a lot of different styles. It's going to be an abundance of price options. You got the GT Hustle, I think is it the GT Hustle? It might be one of the GT Cuts, but that shoe is $95. It's a great price point, right? So you got an abundance of price options in Nike basketball. They're stylish. They are tech-driven. The availability is there. You can go to any House of Hoops in a Foot Locker or a Dick's Sporting Goods, and the brand recognition is obviously with Nike for basketball. Now, the weaknesses, this is a big one, missed-seasonality. Right now, you're seeing a ton of basketball releases starting to be released, and like the new year of shoes come out. It used to be that you could release basketball shoes at any time and they would roll, but Nike seems to be missing what the seasonality is of basketball shoe sales. That's important for other brands as well. There's also a lack of education. Ask me to explain that in a later video, because that lack of education really causes issues for every brand attempting to sell basketball shoes. There's a failure to categorize, and pricing is an issue. The GT Cut, Nike's best basketball shoe, in my opinion, went from $180 to $190. It is now $200 and $210. A lot of those shoes are going to sit and go on sale. You'll be able to get them half off because that price is way outside of the average price for basketball shoe sales. Now, the opportunities for Nike basketball and therefore other brands in basketball, a new brand like a Holo, opportunities, expanding demographics. You have men's leagues now. And there's a lot of men's leagues popping up now. With the big three, a lot of older guys are getting re-inspired to compete in basketball again. Nike training, which kind of fits into a window where Nike has these studios popping up where they may also start putting basketball courts in those studios, but that's an opportunity. Digital media is an opportunity. Local integration is a huge opportunity, and that means grassroots at the lower level, at the regional level, as opposed to having a bunch of big people over basketball. A more regional approach would be very beneficial to Nike, Jordan, any sneaker company that has basketball shoes. Threats. You have a more discerning customer now. More discerning customer. They're very patient with what they're buying. The threats, you have a receptive customer who is open to buying something they never heard of. They'll buy an Anta, a Kyrie Anta. They'll buy a 361 because of the Joker. Grassroots influence. Nike is hurting basketball in many ways because they invest so much money into the high-end players. All right? You're losing basketball players because of declining public facilities. And then you have what's called specialization, where some athletes are getting into a sport, and that's the only sport they played through their whole lives, which is leading to injuries. But that's a different discussion. So that is the SWOT analysis We're going to move on to the next one. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to cut these up into different videos and make them just quicker 5 to 10 minute videos, or leave them as, you know, what they are, which is this big long video. But let's keep going. Next one. So in this next chart is for brand Jordan. Now, you're going to be able to see it. I just want to read this first. So the seller data being used is possibly the closest to retail of any seller willing to share their data. It's very hard to get people to give me their information on what they're selling because they are very nervous about kind of talking about these things. So this creates what can be considered a direct reflection of what is occurring at retail. So this seller's data is very closely in line with what I see at Foot Locker or at Hibbett Sports or at City Gear DTLR. Very closely aligned. I mean, it almost looks like this is a traditional retail store, not a resale store. So the challenge that I have, though, is working with a traditional Nike account to get their information on sales. So I know the managers at Hibbett Sports, but they won't give me their information. They'll talk to me about it, but they won't give me their real sales numbers. And understandably, that's proprietary. You can't just give any random person this sales data. But I can kind of do what I'm doing here with questions. So when I ask them something, it's not quite as accurate as I would like. And I know those stores won't share their information. So I get that. But because I have this seller's information, it makes things much easier. So how does this chart that you're looking at here break down? The seller's data for Jordan Brand Performance Basketball, right? It does not include Jordan Retro / Casual. In other words, it doesn't include Jordan 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, not those. This is performance. This is performance. The retro stuff is a much bigger set of data. Jordan no longer makes Chris Paul's or the Melo signature models anymore. So those are no longer a part of brand Jordan basketball. So that's not there anymore. And this is for 2024. The Westbrook series they sell at factory stores, but there's not big major releases for the Westbrook. Why not? It's basically a staple shoe for the factory and clearance stores, which means that you can get it typically at $49 to $59, and they don't sell on the third-party marketplace. So the shoes included on this list that you see below is going to feature Jordan Brand's NBA athletes Zion, Luka, and Tatum. So you got what's called the flagship Jordan shoe, right? And that's the technical centerpiece of Jordan basketball. So that shoe, contrary to popular belief, performs better than most people assume, even at its premium SRP of $200. And I think it's going to be $210 this year for the 40. Now, from my analysis and the dates of sneakers sold, the Jordan 38, Jordan 39, the signature flagship model for Jordan Brand, sold extremely well when Paolo Banchero was healthy. And I think that contributed to a lot of interest for the Jordan 38 and 39. So if you see below, you got 11 pair of Jordan 38s, but that was not available very often for that seller to get. And Jordan Brand does a really good job of delivering the flagship model. They don't make a bunch of them. They have a limited number of colors that drop. And then the sell-through is not bad on those shoes. So the seller doesn't have access to a lot of them. Now, the Jordan 39 was the number 2 sold shoe for Jordan Brand for this seller. 47 pair sold of the Jordan 39. It's basically the Jordan 39 in design was the first model that wasn't directly influenced by the Jordan 9, right? So for the last few years, Jordan Brand took the Jordan 1, and then they made the 31, and it was based on the Jordan 1. And they did that all the way through up until the 39. It broke away, and it was a good shoe. Now, since the Jordan 31, all of those models were basically redesigns of the kicks that Jordan wore. The Jordan 39 sold really well in third party for this seller, and it performed well at retail, so you couldn't find them out there that much. But Nike didn't make a whole ton of them. So when we go through the rest of the shoes here in the chart, right, The 39 slowed down considerably and went into a discount mode after Paolo Banchero got hurt. Do I think Paolo is that influential for the 39? I don't necessarily think it was Paolo. I think it was the fact that the Jordan 39 included Nike's use of Zoom X in the Jordan brand basketball line. With that Zoom X, that cushioning was amazing. It's a great shoe. And then it was caged. So I have to put a picture in so you can see a picture of it. But the Jordan Luka 2 was at the tail end of its release pattern, and it was not readily available. It had an SRP of 110 to 120, and that landed in the sweet spot at retail, so it sold pretty well, and not many were available for third party, which means that the seller only sold 2 pair of Jordan Luka 2s, but they were at the end of their life, and they were moving into the 3. Now they sold 14 pair of the Jordan Luka 3, and it was readily available. However, it stalled after the initial release, and I'm seeing this with the Luka 4 as well. And that's because the Luka's lack of availability is bad, but more important, they increased the shoe price to $130 and $140. That took Nike out of the sweet spot. Now, there's a sweet spot for basketball shoe sales, and I discovered this when I did a research paper on the Ja and the introduction of the Ja. And that sweet spot for Nike is really about 110 to 120. That's the price point where things sell very well for the swoosh and for Jordan brand in performance basketball. That 130 price point, the Luka, not a great seller. The Jordan Tatum 2, excellent shoe. As a matter of fact, the Jordan Tatum series is the flagship for signature basketball in Jordan brand. The Tatum series is more successful than any of the other ones. It's less expensive than both the Luka and the Zion. And Tatum's success with a championship helped tremendously, right? But the fact that it's the cheapest shoe, it was 110, 120, make it a really good option. Unfortunately, tariffs have driven the price of the Jordan Tatum 3 up, and his injury at the end of the season kind of hurt. But the 2 wasn't as available as a 3, but this seller said that hoopers loved that shoe, and he had a lot of hoopers buy that shoe. So hoopers love the fit of the shoe, and it's a high cut. It's one of the few shoes that are released that's a high cut shoe. That 125 price point helped, but it's now 130. Sales have slowed down considerably, and Tatum is out. But the Jordan Tatum 3 was the best-selling sneaker for Jordan brand, for this seller. Now remember, if we parallel with the retail marketplace, these are probably very in line with what you'll see at retail on a much bigger scale. But that Jordan Tatum 3 was excellent for this seller. 52 pairs sold. The Jordan Zion 3, Zion sneakers are risky. His lack of playing is killing the value of his kicks. Even if they are on sale, they aren't worth the risk. And that is directly from the seller. 5 pairs sold. Whole year. 5 pair Jordan Zion 3. But that's going to wrap up this section. Let's go on to the next thing.